There we go. Now we're live. Okay. Hello, everybody. My name is Paladin, and this is week 2 of 4 of the Discord Community Growth Challenge. And so today, I'm going to be talking about a lot regarding events, psychology, but also we get to start off by talking with some of the people that I say some. We're talking with Gabriel on what exactly. Hi, Gabriel. They can hear you. Meet Gabriel. Here's Gabriel. He's a professional GM. He just became one, and he started his own Discord server. And so we're gonna talk about everything that we learned the last week, including myself. I've been helping the other GMs as well, and then talking about what we've seen, what we've been surprised about, things that maybe didn't work as well, and so on. And then after that, we'll go over the weekly learning stuff. And unfortunately, Gabriel won't be able to join us for the whole time. So at some point, whenever he has to go, we'll take a break, and then we'll come back and finish the rest of this as well. I know that last week I didn't do all of the reading for all of the documents because there was a lot. So I'm gonna have to go back and record those at a later point and then come back and add to it. But yeah, so let's start with everything that's been going on in the last week, really. So Gabriel and I were talking as the video was going live about what we had seen in the last week, right? And so like here in the archives, we had a vote, or no, we didn't have a vote. There were people that wanted to participate. And so we voted with those administrators, and we chose to have quality engagement be our thing. And so we have currently like 2 people a day that talk in our voice, in our messages, in our channels. And we want to have 8 people messaging per day. And so we got together yesterday and we were planning it out properly. And we came up with some pretty good ideas, and Gabriel was there too. So it was a lot of fun. But yeah, like Gabriel, like what sort of challenges have you had in the last week with your server?
What sort of what? Sorry?
Challenges.
Yeah. Talking to my community was kind of the biggest challenge, like not because they wouldn't talk to me, but because I needed to be ready to receive like a no or silence. That's mostly it. I thought that like every communication that I attempt with my community would result in silence, because I have so few people. Like there's almost nobody in my community right now. Like I have, as I told you before, I have 4 tables, but 2 of them are in Brazil, so they're not part of this community, this English-speaking community. So I have just 2 tables that are currently running in that server, and there's like that amounts to less than 10 players. So I imagine that whenever I posted there, like no one would actually interact with it. But they did interact with it. They chose the goal. And the next step, I had to take time to analyze it, to research a bit, and prepare what I'm gonna ask them later, because I'm still like a bit on the fence about asking them stuff, because like they answer the poll, but will they communicate when I ask, like talk in chat, discuss about like what kinds of events they would like, what measures are we going to take, will they even care about those stuff? That's what worries me most whenever it comes to this, like getting a no.
It's, and I think it just really comes down to approach, because I would also be worried about that. And interestingly enough, like some of what you're talking about is like in here with like psychology and what people like go for events. And what, kind of giving a preview of what's to come in a bit, what it says is that events or communication that centers around filling a need rather than getting a task done is what tends to be successful. And so things that are very worky. You know how yesterday we sat down and we were thinking of how we're going to fix up the structure for the Discord server. I mean, it's a bunch of tasks. It's work, right? I mean, we gotta rename the channels. We got to do this and that. But then we kind of made it really fun by turning it into a challenge. Like we have it so that way there are certain familiars that the server gets to vote on, and depending on which 2 or 3 are the final, we'll make 2 or 3 teams on Sunday, and then we're gonna compete on who gets the most points by fixing the Discord server, and then have that be our server pet Tamagotchi thing. So it's very it's fun. It gives people choice, and also people get to participate. But it's a little bit more than just work. Like there's like a reward at the end of it. But I know what you mean. Like it's very hard to just bring that up, especially when it's people you had just met or met recently, and there's not much of a history in socializing with those people, right? So, what do you think would be maybe some ways of like approaching that? Like, were you wanting to maybe do it more like in a chat, or did you want to like make an event, or what are your thoughts about it so far?
Yeah, I imagine going like in a general chat, like text chat, because I think people are even more afraid to join like a voice chat, because they're like, oh, I'm the voice chat now, and I'm a bit exposed. So I think the text chat gives them like a bit more security to engage, but I'm not sure. I don't even know.
Well,
what would you suggest?
Do you run play-by-post games, or is it over VC?
Over VC, both of them.
So then they're comfortable being in voice channel and being heard, at least you know from that.
Yeah.
So what I would recommend kind of going into it is it's all in how you frame it. And so if you kind of approach it from the perspective of like, hey, you know, that's great, let's decide this together, then it gives them a lot of the control. And coming into it with some ideas of what you would run for events would actually help out a lot. And so you could say something like, hey guys, like let's come together and let's decide some of the events. I'll actually bring a list of some possibilities of what we could do, and then whatever we choose, we'll just plan it there, and it'll take about this much time. And then if you can also add something to do afterwards as well, so you're not just, you know, showing up to do work. You could try to make it fun as well, or you could try to make that list of events, ask people for what they would want to run or want to have run, and then add it to a list and then make that a poll. It just depends on how busy people are, because I know people will have time to play D&D, like that's the time that they have free. But if they don't have time outside of that, it's kind of hard. So it depends on when there is even availability for everyone to get together. Like here...
Yeah, they themselves voted for for events.
Yeah.
But I'm not, like, I don't even have a remote idea what kind of event I could run.
Man, there's so many. I think it's probably easier to ask them what they would want to do as a group. Because, well, like there's some people that like video games. Like here, we used to have Minecraft, Valheim, and Terraria, and then other times we would have like small learning sessions. Like for example, like this, right? Like every Wednesday, I teach. We would teach players stuff. We would teach GMs workshops. There's a lot of things that can be done, and so it's like whenever you have so many choices, you kind of have a little bit of choice paralysis of what to do, right? Of what exactly it is to have done. And what really helps is, like yesterday, we almost kind of ran into that choice paralysis as well. Whenever we were trying to decide what to choose for our 6-month and 12-month goal, and it took having to look at the mission and the vision to kind of guide us. And so I would say the same thing there. Like if you're getting stuck on what to do, I would look at, well, what's the purpose of why we're here? And using that as a frame of like, okay, well, what sort of things can possibly be done to fit towards that mission? Which I believe you had said yours is a place for people to come together. And I'm sorry, could you repeat what it was again?
Yeah, it was like having my players be friends with each other.
Okay, so then having to create events that would support towards that, essentially. Having to create friendship events is, well, there's a lot that goes into that. It might also be potentially a little bit too open, but also your community just started, right? So I don't think that you would have the right answer quite yet. It's just getting started, so that actually might be okay at the very beginning. And then as time goes on, you'll see patterns, and then you can define it a little bit more. Because even like for me in the archives, we didn't have it entirely set from the beginning. It took about a year for us to really kind of have things in place. So, but that's a good one to start with, though. But if it's about making events, it could be that the event is making the events themselves, like making the actual fun stuff. Depends on what it is that their interests are. But if you haven't had a chance to get to know them yet, it might be that one of your events might literally be that. It's like, hey, let's introduce ourselves to each other's event, because we don't know who we are. So once you kind of have a better idea of personalities and who's who and who can do what and what it is that they're interested in, you kind of have a better idea of what to work with. But when you don't have information, it's kind of hard to make a decision, right? So I think that might be like a good first step, is starting to get to know each other a bit more, maybe through like some sort of party event, or like just an introductory just get together, perhaps. What do you think?
Yeah, get together introduction makes sense. One thing that I thought like was like playing some game besides Dungeons and Dragons, like playing Gartic or something. Have you ever played Gartic, like Gartic
Yeah.
Phone?
Oh yeah, so many times. I love Gartic though. It's so
Yeah,
great.
it is really fun. It is like a good time to get to know people while drawing bad draws.
Exactly. Yeah, it's really great. And they developed a couple more games on Discord. We were playing one a couple days ago. It's called Banana or something. You get these cards, you got to combine them together. It's really great. It's funny. And all the while, there's like naked dancing bananas in the background. It's pretty funny. Anyway, so for me, like what I've seen that was interesting is that there were a lot of people that really wanted to try and get it going, but they were very, I guess, scared. Like they were scared to take the first step. And so we started with 13, and we went that went down to 5, which is still better than 10%. But what I would see is that there was a lot of just very like kind of like putting it off. Like they wanted to make the decisions for everybody without them having, you know, a say in what's happening, which is, you know, not the point of what we're trying to do this last week. It was very hard. I think it was very hard to see people try to relinquish control over something that they have ownership over, when they're used to being the one that kind of decides everything. And that takes a lot of, I mean, it takes a lot of courage, but also it takes a lot of trust too. And sometimes it can be hard to kind of trust the people that you had just met, right? So like, especially if there's no connection or no history at all, which I think was the case for some people. So, and
yes,
that's like to no fault of theirs. Like it's very hard to put that much faith into people that you had barely just met, maybe for like less than a month. So it's like understandable. Like, okay, yeah, you want to make sure to put trust in the right people, especially when you haven't had a chance to even play with them yet, too, which I think was the case for one person.
Mm-hmm.
But aside from that, I think one of the things that I saw that was a big misunderstanding, which I might have to rephrase it better for next time, is that the community members that were voting in the various other servers, they had a misunderstanding about what it is that choosing those things meant. And so there was one server that chose value, but the thing is that about value is that you have to create the value to give to other people. And so there was an assumption that they were wanting the owner of that server to be the only one working on it, and not them, which wasn't the case. And so it was like meant to be something they do together. But then once they realized that, oh, I have to actually put effort, they kind of stopped engaging. But also, I mean, any of the choices that they would have chose would have kind of had to have some sort of commitment. So like with the first one, was it having to have higher quality engagements and talking more? Well, that requires that you actually talk more. Having the other one is making events, so you have to make the events and also show up to the events, right? And the other one is growing the Discord server, so that means you have to go actually actively advertise and change things about the server to kind of entice people to join. So no matter which one of the four, like the community members are going to have to participate in some way or form to kind of have that one thing happen. And so it was a little disheartening because I could see it in that other person's eyes, like, or I could hear it at least, when realizing like, oh, they don't want to do anything with me actually. And so so I was like, yeah, that's hard. Sometimes we end up with a server of people that don't necessarily want to contribute towards those things. And so what makes it hard is whenever starting with transaction first, sometimes that is kind of what you get, right? Like whenever you start with transaction, sometimes all you get is transaction because no one wants the other things, or they didn't join for those other things. But it's actually coincidentally, I do have a response to that here that I'll go over in a bit. But yeah, what do you think? It sounds a little, I want to say a little extreme. It's also like very, very tragic and sad because it's like, imagine a person giving all their energy or like wanting something. There was another that was in a completely different situation where co-owning a server, and one wanted it and the other one didn't. So it's like his best friend said no, and so they couldn't. So they decided, so they can't grow the Discord server together, and it kind of created a little bit of a split. So that was like another situation that happened. But yeah, what do you think? How's all that sound?
Well, I understand people like getting behind the server or joining for a reason that is not like sticking around, because your server, I got to your server because you told me you do like some classes here to help professional GMs and stuff. That was the reason I came here, and I believe like most of the people that came here for that reason are interested in that, and not like sticking around for get-together events or community projects or stuff like that. And I can see the same happening in like a server, like a young server like mine, for example, that people are joining because they are there to play Dungeons and Dragons and other RPGs that I'll be running. And that's the reason they are there, and they are there like waiting to play with me, and that's it.
Yeah.
So that's like the expectation I have. That's why it feels risky to get to talk to them, because they are probably not interested in that sort of stuff. But I believe, like in my example, in my situation, that is a bit different for my server, that
There we go.
getting them to be friends could also be part of the quote-unquote service or / product that I'm providing. Like, because playing Dungeons and Dragons in any TTRPG is also a social thing, right? So, yeah, half of the fun is playing the game with me, but the other half of the fun is the people you're playing with. So, creating bonds in the server, that's like, it aligns with the reason they came in the first place. Did that make sense?
It makes sense. It is a social game, you're right. There is one server that's not a part of this, not a part of any of this. I'm not going to say the name of who they are either, but I'm doing work for them for my tech stuff. And I genuinely am very surprised by how they have managed to make a community come together, like an authentic community that's naturally, it's almost like Floki's Tavern, like how I talked about Floki's Tavern being so great. And when I look at what it is that this person is doing versus what other people are doing, it is a lot of the things that I'm talking about here, about if you approach it in this way versus that way. It's basically what she's doing, except she didn't do any of the learning. She did it all on her own. And so what I see in their server is that the satisfaction of the players is through the roof. I had to do five interviews where I'm interviewing the players and I'm getting their input. I'm like, hey, like, how are the games here? And I like had to really cut down my questions because it was just going way too long on all of the interviews, and so it shows that whenever you really do approach authentically, genuinely, like no cap, like, and it's about the people that you are doing this for, not yourself, not like a means to an ends for myself, but whenever every choice is for the people that you're running for, then it does actually end up building itself. They actually have to say no to people because they don't have time, because it's advertising itself basically. That's a good business. And so a great business is one that does that, like, and it thrives over time because their focus and their genuine attention is put towards the players. And so that means, yes, having to take that extra step and ask questions, because if we don't ask, we don't know. But if it's for the betterment of their experience, then it shouldn't be a very hard approach. I think where it becomes a little bit convoluted, I think in all of this, is that the goal is what is, I think, what was maybe a little bit misunderstood a tiny bit. Because the goal isn't to make a Discord server. I mean, it is. We want to grow the Discord server community, but what really are we doing? We're bringing people together, and we're giving them a place of belonging, a place where they have autonomy and choice, and a place where they can grow and belong and connect with one another. While, yes, we get to play D&D as well. And D&D does help to connect people, but only the people at that table. It doesn't connect other people that are not in that table because they're not there. So, that's why D&D, like, yes, it does help immensely, but whenever it comes to community stuff, it's going to be always a minority of the whole. So if wanting to connect people together and become friends, I would think that one of the things that would have to be done is, well, you would have to bring like-minded people together, right? You don't want to bring in people that aren't interested in not having friends. So that would be one of the things. It's like you would have to filter who to say no to and who to say yes to. Because if you say yes to everybody, I will tell you the story that happened here, is that I ended up kicking 500 people out of the server because they tried to overthrow what I had built here. And they were not very nice. Not all the people in that community 2.5 years ago were very nice. And neither were they very, I'd done a bunch of work. They would ask things of me and then never show up, which is not great. It was very disrespectful, of course. But there's a lot to be said about what it is that people want, and I think that trying to bring in people that don't want the thing that you're trying to build is, I think it would be kind of weird, right? It's kind of like, yeah, this person hates mashed potatoes, and all I have is mashed potatoes on my menu. Well, I got mashed potatoes. They don't want the mashed potatoes, right? So you gotta be careful. You gotta be very intentional in building, if you're building from the start, to make sure that if you are wanting to have certain values or you want to see certain things in the people that are in the community, then search for those things. And then hope, and always like err on the side of hope that people are wanting that if they're not really sure, or if they just kind of want to test it out. But I think one of the worst things that we probably could do is trying to give time to people that want the opposite, or are active, or like in being there they kind of start to tear down the community, and like by challenging the values or being complete antagonists to the values. Case in point, what happened here in the last 24 hours. There was someone that was not very kind to me in a different community. Okay, it's not my community. That's fine. But the owner was okay with it. It's not something that I stand for. I like respecting people. And so, in my self-respect, I removed myself from that community, and I also removed that person from this community that was disrespectful and was okay with being disrespectful to that degree, because it's not something I stand for. But if I had kept them here, then that means I am continuing to give that person attention when I can give my attention to someone else that would be more in aligned with what it is that I believe in and being more collaborative. Even in the professional GM space, I mean, I've had players that, like, for example, for a West March that's required collaboration, there would be people that would just say, no, I don't want to talk to other people between sessions. And they would actually say that actively when I'm like, are you okay with doing this? They'd be like, no. I'm like, okay, well then I can't have you join the West March. I'm sorry, that's a requirement. Like, I can't not have that because it requires the players work together. But if that person doesn't want to collaborate, then at least they were truthful. Some people didn't find out until later that they really didn't like it or didn't want it. And you just never know unless you try. But anyway, I'm saying a lot now, but that's quite a lot. I think whenever we give people a chance and we look for the right people, then it kind of gets there. But if we just kind of let anyone come in, it starts to become a little problematic, I think. What do you think?
Yeah, if the server has like a vision, a goal, people need to align to that. Otherwise, it's how you said. Makes no sense having them.
Yeah, and so I suppose then, have you had a chance to talk with these players potentially about what is that their interests are and what they want, what they like?
Yet, yeah. Well, I know some of them, like from our sessions, from sessions we had, from talk we had before and after game. So I know a few of them. I know a few of the interests they have. Like a lot of them are into video games. A lot of them are into Baldur's Gate. Quite some of them are into League of Legends. So yeah, I know some stuff they like, but I've never had the chance of like just hopping on a call and talking like for no reason but get together and talk. Whenever I could talk to them was because of the game.
I got you. Okay, that's fair. One of the things that I did, and you don't have to listen to my advice if this doesn't work. But whenever a player would join my game, on SPG or wherever I met them from, I would always take 20 to 30 minutes to talk with them before telling them anything about logistics of the game. And so what I would do is I would sit in here like in VC, I'd be like, hey, how's it going? And like, what's your name? This is who I am. Tell me a little bit about yourself. And I would just have a conversation with them about not D&D, anything else but D&D. And if they did start, and if they're very focused on the game, then that would tell me like, okay, they're not interested in making a connection. I'm gonna go with someone else. And so that's a kind of a good way of knowing. Like if the person is genuinely trying to reach out to, of course, get to know you, and they're like also wanting to be known themselves, then you know that they're wanting some sort of connection, because humans by nature, they want to have socialization and they want to belong. And the only way to do that is to talk to others. But if people are cutting the conversation or trying to quickly come out of that sort of conversation, then it means that they don't want that, either because they already have that somewhere else, or they really are just looking to play a game, and then it's just really a transactional thing, which there's nothing wrong with that. But it's good to know where people are coming from. And also getting to know people ahead of time from a business perspective, it actually increases retention a lot, because then you get to know a little bit more about them. And then you get to make better decisions on how to cater the game to them. So, it might be something to try. And if you've already been doing that, great. But yeah, like getting to know people is interesting. There's a lot of really great people in this space, and people that are in the professional side. I met some people that are very interesting, very, very advanced in their field, that have a lot of cool things to say. So, I mean, you never know unless you try to ask. But that might be something, to maybe keep in mind, so that way you can better, and also it would better protect you from the kind of players that you don't want to meet too. You'll kind of filter them out really easily just by talking to them for a couple of minutes. Gabriel, you there? Did I lose you?
Yes, I am.
Okay.
Yes, I am.
Yeah.
I'm listening. I'm listening.
No, that's it. That was all. But
Hmm.
yeah, maybe try that. See if it helps. It might help a lot.
Hmm.
Yeah.
As I said, I already do like 10, 15-minute talks before
Oh,
a
there you
game
go. Yeah.
and a checkup after the game. I already do that. So yeah. So
Oh, before you accept them into the game, period, or like before every game.
before every game,
Oh,
I have a talk with
what
them.
I meant is before they join, even like before even onboard.
Ah.
So like at the very start, like you just met them, they sent you like they just pressed like, hey, I'm joining this game on SPG. You haven't talked to them yet ever, and so whenever they kind of first come to your server or whenever however you meet them, like that's whenever it's a good point to get to know them a bit.
Oh, no, yeah, I do have a
Okay.
talk to them, but it's usually not like a funnel. I don't. I've never actually excluded anyone for this talk. I just asked them like, "Hey, how are you? What's your experience with RPGs? What's your experience with Dungeons and Dragons? What's the thing you like most about the game?" So like those type of questions, just to see whether or not they are a good fit for the table. But I've never excluded anyone for that. Usually, whenever someone chooses a game of mine, they already know what they're into, so the game already has like all of the information there. So probably the player joining fits that category because he chose it after he read everything.
Oh, I got you. Uh, yeah, no, that's good. I think whenever what I really mean is understanding people beyond the game. So that way, matching personalities are at this table. I think like conflicting personalities would definitely make it a little worrisome. But also, there's a lot of things beyond just D&D. Anything that has to do with D&D that really would affect the table immensely
Mm-hmm.
in one way or the other. So it just helps. But anyway, that's neither here nor there. But other things that I've seen in the last week. Let's see. So there was also one of the servers was a West March, and I didn't mention this last week, but West Marches are communities in and of themselves. So imagine trying to build a community on top of a community. It doesn't really work. And so a West March is unfortunately like one of those things that really like it can have like a community that is not related to the gaming outside of it. But West Marches are so big and so interactive and so focused on the things that happen and the collaboration that it really doesn't have much room for anything else. It's like you're kind of spending all your time between sessions talking to each other about the game, so it doesn't really leave much room for other things. So I think that's one of those type of game styles where you would have to have it separated somewhere else. And I say that with as an opinion, not as a fact. I've had that here where I had a West March in the server, and it just didn't work. It didn't mesh. It almost felt like it was a clique. Like they were part of the in group and everyone else was out of it. Because you would see those players, they were talking with each other about stuff that no one else even knew that was being referenced, and it created a big divide between people more than anything. So I think it's easier to just kind of separate like like a community server focused around something else than a West March, because West Marches are already kind of community based on their own, right? Just by the way that the style is ran, which is completely okay. But I think that it's better to separate and then have less friction between people at the server. You know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean? Yeah. Okay. So ready to talk about what this week's events are? Do you have anything else you want to talk about? Any questions or?
No, no, I'm good.
Okay. So the first thing that I have here is, and by the way, this is all research. I spent time collecting sources, amassing together a series of documents that are going to go over the different aspects of running community events. So this should answer a lot of your questions, actually, in particular, because I know that you got events for your thing. My dog is looking at me with the biggest eyes at the moment. Hold on, let me let her out real quick. Just a second. All right, I'm back. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to talk about is like what really drives TTRPG players to community events and the psychology of engagement. And so it's going over understanding the fundamental human needs behind a gaming community and what it is that people join gaming communities for. And so when you think about why people join Discord servers for tabletop gaming, the obvious answer is probably going to be people are joining to play games and connect with them, right? But what's fascinating is that that's where a lot of community builders get it wrong, because it's not just about the games that are being made. In fact, research showed that whenever players are messaging in a server, for every one message that was about mechanics or the game, scheduling, or rules, there were 3.2 times more messages that were about socio-emotional communication. Which means that for every one message about game mechanics, scheduling, and rules, there are 3 times as many messages about relationships, feelings, a shared experience, and social connection. And that is actually for paid games as well too, typically. And so think about what that means for a moment. So if people were primarily motivated by gameplay mechanics, the games, like the game itself, or like the setting, that would mean that the discussions that would be had in the server would be mostly technical, with occasional side chatter about our lives. But instead, of course, it's the opposite, right? Like we see that TTRPG communities tend to be driven by social identity and forming that identity and belonging instead of gameplay mechanics. What do you think about that, Gabriel? How's that sound?
Well, it does make sense. I think it does make a little bit of sense because, as we talked before in the beginning, RPGs are a really social experience, right? So
Yeah.
even when talking about the RPGs, we talk about like what we feel playing the RPGs. And I remember that one of the first things that I learned in your in your Wednesday talks you have here in the server, it is that the value that players get from the game, it's what they feel while playing. Like it's not about what you provide, it's about what they experience. And talking about this experience, it's part of the game. So it makes sense.
Yeah, at least like during the game, but between games, outside of that, they're still wanting to belong in some way. At least typically whenever people are joining a community Discord server. Whenever people are joining a server, of course, for a paid game, they're joining for the paid game. But in the sense of like, you know, my link is out there, anyone can find me, anyone can join, it's a different perspective. Because in those cases, people that are coming in, they're coming in, of course, also looking for a game, but they're also looking for a place that they can play and also find the people that would get along with them best, right? And so now, and it's because of this that the insights on events are then unsurprising for things like drop-in game nights. Because the thing about drop-in game nights where like you basically like say like, hey, we're gonna play once a week, open table. With those kind of events, they tend to be very focused on task completion and not community building. It's like drop in and play a game, or let's show up and let's create something or do something and build something together. There are a couple of core psychological motivations that actually drive whether or not someone will join for an event or not. And there's 3. And so there actually is something called self-determination theory. And so basically what it is, it's something that identifies like universal psychological needs that drive human motivation and the need for socializing and engagement. And so there is a statistic out there that, and I've heard this too, I'm not sure when I've heard it first, but it's that Discord server events have a 15% attendance rate, typically, which means that 85% of the people will not show up. which is not surprising, especially when I've seen a lot of events. I ran a lot myself here, and I say that's pretty consistent, especially when not knowing what one is doing, and also if not setting it up in the correct way and the correct time and stuff. But yeah, 15%. It's not that many. So what is that, like 15 for every 100? So what is that? That is lowest. 3 out of every 33, I believe. Dividing by 5. No, 3 out of 20. 3 out of 20 people will be showing up. Surprising, right?
Yes.
That's not that much, but there's actually ways to increase it. So there's 3 things. There's 3 main drivers, and so the first one is that people have a need for choice and control. And so now this comes through what researchers call like choice architecture. One of the easiest things, of course, on Discord is being able to give permissions and for views and roles for things that people want to see, giving people a custom view of the things that they want to be pinged for, the things they want to see, and the things they want to experience. That's one part of it. The other part of it is also being able to add their thoughts or their ideas into what is being done. And I mean more than just having player agency. It goes far deeper than just being able to choose a class that you want. It means that they get to include their way of maybe like reasoning, or maybe having some sort of value that they have into the game that they have as well, to some degree. Now, what researchers have shown is that whenever events emphasize player agency and collaborative decision making, it actually ended up being 40 to 60% higher on engagement. And I will say that actually does track. There was one time, well, there were several times in the West, when I was running the West Marches, that I would have, hey, let's meet together and decide how the world is going to be built. And people would actually show up. They would get to put their ideas on, like, oh, it'd be kind of cool if we saw this or that, rather than me making the world, which I could have made it my own, because they were putting their ideas into it. They actually had a lot of them did show up because they thought that was cool. And so having something like, hey, let's build a world together is a good way of having people participate. It's even cooler if you actually run that same world as your paid game as well, and then people will be even more invested. It's just kind of awesome, which is what we did. So that's a good way of kind of keeping people engaged and also keeping people invested in what is going on. But the key insight here is that they're able to add to that world, and that it is meaningful, and that there is a process for it, and it's not just random, because then also that could be just as bad. The second thing is that there's a need for growth and mastery, and that means competence. And so competence satisfaction is about more than just leveling up, even though we do have like things like skill learning, leveling up our characters. It also comes into things like having peer recognition for having done something good in the game. For example, like recognizing that someone had really good RP. That's, a form of competence. Having some sort of mentorship program. For example, like here, we're going to start having here we have the Grow Community Challenge, right? Next month, it's going to be having to teach GMs how to run West Marches, is what other things we're going to do. And so on. And so the things like that are what help with growth and mastery. And I will say this is actually very accurate, is that whenever there were character creation workshops, whenever people were teaching how to play D&D 5e and making the character together, 95% of the audience would stay from beginning to end. 70% of those players would actually convert into active players in a game. Now this is probably free side, because I don't think that's a very accurate statistic for the paid side. It's going to be different. But it does show that people will show up for things that they will learn and, of course, make something together with, especially when it's collaborative. And they'll even show up to another event afterwards, which is also just as strong. So the key insight here is that competence isn't just about becoming better as a player or GM. It's about feeling capable and valued within the context of what the community is there for. And so this also includes social competence, which is knowing how to interact well with others, creative competence, contributing ideas and content, and collaborative competence, which is like working effectively with others toward a shared goal. And so successful communities create multiple pathways for competence development, from beginner-friendly learning opportunities to advanced challenges, like the one that we're having now, right? It's very advanced. I mean, even like on the professional side, it's very hard to build a community and then stick with it. It's very very challenging, and it's very time extensive. And then the last one is the foundation of community building. In other words, relatedness. So relatedness satisfaction emerges from genuine community belonging. It's whenever you identify with the people that are there. Imagine that you were in a server where no one else was like you in any way or capacity. You probably would feel left out in some way, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's basically that. Feeling connected and significant to other people because they make you feel like you're important. And then having it be genuine too. Like there is a strong statistic that 66% of players on online communities will continue to socialize outside if they are made to feel valuable as a person, right? And not just because of what they give or provide, although they probably can't provide a lot, but whenever people are looked at and treated authentically and they are given validation in whatever it is that they're trying to do, people stick around for a long period of time. This also is a reason why West Marches tend to have a very high attendance rate. It's because people are connecting together, and because they're relatedness in towards a common goal is, of course, to like decide how they're going to go forward in the West March. It tends to have a very high attendance rate, so that's why West Marches are so successful in that way as a key metric. Yeah, those are the 3 ways. What do you think?
Well, I think it all makes sense.
Yeah, autonomy, relatedness, and competence. I mean, yeah, they're very natural. It's just a matter of like how to exactly give those things to people. So now let's talk about traditional events. So there's a lot of traditional events that miss the mark. For example, movie night. Let's play video. Let's, whenever things are very samey or they're not mindful in how they're supposed to be valuable towards a person, because a person's gonna have to spend their time to do that when they could just instead do something else. Those kind of games, they give really poor autonomy, especially when something is decided ahead of time, or there was like no decision-making process for the community to decide what it is. And also, whenever they miss competence, like developing something, for example, if we're just kind of meeting just to meet, people aren't really gonna want to come because there's like, well, what's the point? I could just do something else. But most critically, they fail because they also tend to not have a lot of relatedness in the structure. Either because it's a temporary interaction, or it creates a temporary experience that doesn't continue anywhere beyond that. And so I will say that here, like, we have had in the past, like, video game nights where we played Among Us. And a lot of those people that would show up to play the game, and then I wouldn't really see them until the next time we played Among Us. Or It's just they were only there for that, and it's like, okay, great, but the thing is that we were connecting with the game and not with each other, which is why movies don't work either, because you're just sitting there quietly, not connecting with each other. You're just watching the thing together, right?
Yeah, I thought about movies as well.
Yeah, it ends up not working. It ends up being it creates a lot of anxiety. And so and also it creates a lot of silence, and it doesn't really help you connect with others just watching the same thing. So there has to be a little bit more interaction than that. So that's why traditional events end up not working. Now, so then what's the practical way to kind of implement or like apply or run an event? So knowing those 3 things, like you want it to be related, you want to give competence, you want to give people autonomy, asking first is essential, because if you don't, what do? You take away people's choice, right? You're not giving them a choice, you're deciding for them. So that's one of the three. So if you already get rid of one, so that's not good. But so we give people the choice of options, or give people the ability to add options. It will significantly increase the number of people that will want to participate in those things. And it's the same thing just as well with D&D, or like with a professional server. Let's say that we want to, instead of deciding what game we're going to run, let's say that we already have the players, right? They're at some point, professional GMs have a network already of established players. Instead of deciding what to play, maybe they choose a couple of options and they say like, hey, you guys choose. What do you guys want to do? Or maybe having the players decide what outright and be like, okay, cool, like this is fine. I've never ran this game before, but we'll try it. It just stuff like that will make people care a lot more and want to like come together and see that their ideas or their wants are being taken into consideration a lot more than if they haven't. So that's a good way to approach it. Whenever it comes to multi-table coordinated events, I'm talking about like yesterday, whenever we were gonna play Mungie Mandrill Madness and we are gonna slap people on the butt, turn their butt cheeks cold, which I'm just gonna leave that with no context and leave it in the YouTube video for everybody, and not gonna explain anything. Sorry. So something like that takes up to 20 players, right? Things that are multiple tables in size, they require all three of the core factors be in it. Because if not, imagine having a game that is really, really big. One, you're probably gonna think, well, I'm not gonna have a lot of fun, so why am I gonna show up to this, right? So it has to then either be challenging in some way. Also, that's got to be like have some sort of relatedness to them and like feeling as if they're part of something. But also three, it has to be something that they choose, right? And that they've chosen that thing to happen. So it can be very hard to set up a very big event like that. But if done right, it actually can get a lot of people together at the same time. And then it's like knocking down multiple birds with one stone. But it's also really hard to run. One time I did have a Halloween event where we were having to go chase down some nightmare dragons. And I think they had stole the rum or something. And the players wanted to do it, and I'm like, sure. It ended up being really popular. So there you go. So that's like another little bit of proof that it does work. But even after all of that, there's actually one thing that is most important more than everything else. And that is that it's not about the short term, it's about the long term. And so whenever the perspective goes from entertainment to social support and long-term relationships, that ends up being a different frame that guides servers a lot better on how to do events. Because let's think about it. If we're not going to do anything that's short-term experiences, what are we cutting out? What do you think? What are we not doing anymore? So sorry, things. What? If we're cutting out all short-term experiences, what are we not doing anymore?
Short-term experiences.
So if the focus is building a long-term relationship and not short-term experiences that are like one-off. So if we're like cutting all of those short-term things out, boom, we're not doing it anymore. We're like, what does that cut off? We're not doing we're not doing movie nights, we're not doing yeah, we're not doing movie nights, we're not doing like just like one-off like little games, like I guess.
Yeah, Gartic Fun goes out the window.
Gartic, it's so fun though. Look, it's fun. It really is fun. But it's not a good main event. You wouldn't want to put it up as a thing, advertise it. No one's, you can still do it, but not as the main event itself. I love Gartic Fun, I really do. Now I want to play it.
It gotta be something. It needs to be something about building something, right? Because
yeah, essentially it's about having to creating. Basically, they don't just attend the events, they invite their friends. You gotta let them contribute their ideas. They gotta volunteer to help whatever it is that is being done. And then eventually they become leaders of this thing and they end up doing it more on their own. And that's really what it comes down to, is that you want to try to have these things be more automated, in the sense that, I say automated, you want it to be more autonomous so that they have the capability to run those things with or without, whether you get to say yes to them or not. But just the fact that they have the capability to run those things, it frees up your time. I think that as an owner, like, of course, as professional GMs, we're facilitators, right? So we provide the world, we provide the means for them to connect and have fun. But it's very hard to kind of get the opposite to happen sometimes. And so if you can slowly start like teaching them little bit by little bit to go towards being givers instead of receivers of value, then you end up having a really good combination where they're now giving to each other all the time. And it's not just you, because if it's them feeding each other social appraisals and like being very connected, then it's not just dependent on you being the only person to give that, which can be very exhausting, especially if you're giving to a lot of different tables at the same time, right? So there you go. That's the end of the first one. What did you think, Gabriel? Was that everything you wanted to learn and more?
Well, it is. It is. It gave me a few ideas to think better about what are the events I can suggest for my community. To think about my goals in the events I can suggest. Because it really redirected me from what I was thinking before. I was thinking like, about most of those short-term, like play a game, watch a movie stuff.
Yeah.
And this final part really got me what my doubts were.
It's hard to guess, right? Like I think context matters a lot too. But yeah, I'm glad it helped. Well, I know that you have very limited number of time, so I'm gonna read the titles. You choose the one that you want to learn more, since you're here, right? So the one that showed up. So let's see. So here, I'll read to you the titles. Okay.
I'm not sure if I'll be able to stay for another part of the presentation. Okay. Because I'll be leaving like 5 minutes.
Oh really? Okay. Oh wow, time goes by fast. It's already been an hour. Oh my god. No, that's completely okay. Not a problem at all. Well, regardless,
thank you very much.
Regardless, I'll have you choose the next one anyway, because they're all
okay.
Okay, so you get to choose which one I get to talk about next. Is it event formats that actually drive engagement beyond the basic game, promotion strategies that generate attendance, Discord platform capabilities for TTRPG events like leveraging advanced features, what to do after the event to extend the experience, and also how to measure success and how to optimize the actual event itself.
Okay, let's go with the last one about measuring and optimizing.
Okay. There we go. Okay, well then,
and
in that case, I will see you later, Gabriel. I'm going to take a short
I'll see you later.
5-minute break, and I'll be back, chat. Have a good one. Bye, Gabriel.
Okay. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Bye, guys. I'll be back after a short break. All right, here we go. All right, guys, I'm back. Now, what I'm going to talk about is measuring success and optimizing performance for community events and how to manage those. Now, this is one of the things that really I believe that any size community can do and should do, because anything that you measure is naturally going to improve over time. And of course, if you set goals on top of that, then you have some things to work towards, and then you can focus on the things that really will get the ball moving forward and get you towards what it is that you're trying to achieve with the events that you're trying to run. Now, specifically with measuring community optimization and performance for events, most TTRPG Discord communities measure events in a sort of like a vanity type of fashion. For example, I've seen a lot of, and of course the research proves as well, that they celebrate a high attendance number without really tracking what it is that those attendees really got from participating in that event. Was it a bunch of new members? Was it that those members go on and continue to show up for subsequent events? What is the actual value that those members that showed up for the event actually got from it? And how exactly do you track it, and how exactly and why should you track for those different measurements? And so the difference, now think about a restaurant. At a restaurant, it's like measuring success by how many people walk through the door versus tracking how many people are satisfied by having eaten the food there. Maybe they return, and then maybe they also share by word of mouth recommendations about the server. The first metric, which is how many people come through the door, is going to be a measure of how good your marketing and advertising is. How many people actually show up to look at the thing that you made. And the second tells you about sustainability and long-term growth potential. And so if you are then measuring those, then you then get a better look at what it means for the way that you're planning your events, maybe where you're posting them or how you're posting them. So if you're having problems with advertising, you might want to look at, or you're having problems even getting people showing up, I want to look at the advertising for it, right? So event success metrics is understanding what good participation really looks like. And so event success metrics include participation rates that scale appropriately with community size. And so if you're looking at the size of a Discord community, if you have a community that's between 50 to 200 members, which are considered to be small communities, then targeting about a 20 to 30% participation rate for major events is what would be like a realistic goal for what would be a really good outcome, which reflects high engagement in levels and possible intimate community settings where social connection and peer pressure naturally will drive a little bit of a higher participation. Now, in medium-sized communities, which are about 200 to about 1,000 members, they're typically, you should aim for about a 15 to 20% participation rate for major events, which accounts for the increased diversity and availability and challenges of having so many people. Now, anything over 1,000, that's 10 to 15% is a really good outcome. And if you think about 10 to 15% of 1,000 members, that would be about 100 to 150, which is a lot of people. So anything beyond that, you start to kind of get into a different level of what kind of event that you're running. Now, completion rate. So completion rate is measuring how many people stayed from beginning all the way to the end. And typically about a 70 to 80% participation and completion rate is what tends to indicate a very good, high quality, engaged event. And also tends to lead with a lot more satisfaction for the attendees that have showed up. Low completion rates would suggest that there's problems with either the event pacing, the content quality, or the social dynamics or duration management that needs addressing. So maybe the event was too long, maybe the event was too slow, too fast, maybe it was overwhelming, it was underwhelming, maybe there was no social dynamic at all, right? And so these are the things that will measure, that will affect completion rates for an event. Now, something else that is also measured is return rates. So this is a way of measuring how good the events that you had ran before. And if you ran something similar again, does the same person come back? Or do they never show up again? And so 60% or more of return rates tend to be really great for subsequent similar events that represent a strong indicator of there being some sort of building that is occurring in that community. And so high return rates indicate that events are successfully building community relationships and providing experience that people want to repeat. And so they suggest that your community culture is attractive and that events are meeting deeper psychological needs rather than just providing surface level entertainment. And so return rate analysis also helps identify which event formats build long-term community engagement versus those that attract one-time participants. And so this information guides strategic decisions about which types of events deserve more investment and promotion. And so this is a really good event to track so that way you know which events to run again and again and again, because it'll just keep building your server. Now, another metric that can also be tracked is community participation rate. And so when we're talking about community health metrics, what we're talking about is their ability to grow in their skills, tracking participation of a person's if you probably want to target about 50% or more of active users to be participating in events. And then weekly active users maintain a steady growth pattern. Typically, when you focus more on the growth of what it is that people are engaging with and tracking community participation rate. And so community participation rate calculated as active participants divided by total members will really be should target about 50% or more for like a healthy TTRPG community. And so this metric distinguishes between communities that have accumulated large membership counts versus those that maintain genuine engagement among the members. So high participation rates for community participation rate indicates that the community provides sufficient value to keep members actively engaged rather than just maintaining passive membership. And so participation rate trends over time help identify whether your community is growing sustainably or accumulating inactive members who inflate membership accounts without contributing to the community vitality. And so sustainable growth maintains relatively stable participation rates, even as absolute membership increases. Now, another measurement is weekly active users. Now, weekly active users maintaining steady growth of about 50% of total membership indicates a healthy community momentum and suggests that your programming and culture successfully retain member attention week after week. And so weekly engagement patterns help identify optimal timing for events and communications. And so there's also going to be some seasonal variations in this, right? For example, in the summer, people are not necessarily going to be in their houses. In the winter, we're probably going to be busy with family. And then everything else in between, probably we're busy with work and life and everything else. So when really, are people doing that? But I digress. But there's many gaming communities that see reduced activity during the summer, and that's been consistent. And also the holiday periods, of course, or academic seasons that affect member availability. So these things are naturally going to increase and decrease member engagement, which is completely natural. Now, new member retention is one of the best ways of measuring achievement of whether someone is even integrated into your community or not. And so new member retention achieving 40 to 60% at 7 days and 30 to 40% at 30 days indicates that your community successfully integrates newcomers and provides immediate value that encourages continued participation. And so longer term retention rates indicate whether initial positive impressions develop into sustained community relationships. And so the transition from 7 to 30-day retention often reflects whether new members successfully form social connections and find ongoing value. And if not, then there might be something to work on there. Now, whenever it comes to engagement quality, we're talking about the beyond counting the participation of an event. And so engagement quality indicators include things like how long is a person been in a voice channel, or after the event, how has their voice channel usage changed? Have they showed up to talk and maybe hang out with other members in the voice channel? And if so, for how long and who with? And so this is voice channel utilization. It tracks it in minutes on Discord, and it's per active users who, for the insights of giving depth of social connection that are formed within the community. And so higher voice usage typically indicates stronger relationships, of course, because you're hanging out with more people, right? So it makes sense. And voice channel diversity, or using different voice channel, tracks whether engagement is distributed across multiple channels and activities or concentrated in specific areas. So knowing which channels are the most active and most popular also will help in knowing what to prune and what to put more attention to, because that naturally will tell you what to put your focus on. Makes sense. Now, other things that could be used in order to optimize events is community generated content. This is one of the hardest things to try to get people to do, because this has to be done through member initiated events and contributes, and sorry, it has to be done through member initiated events and contributions that demonstrate the deepest level of community investment, where people become co-creators and they're adding to what is there rather than just being receivers of value. And so this is something that would require a person to have a lot of drive in order to do. There has to be some sort of momentum that this person really wants to give to the community, and they will continue to do it even when unprompted or unasked. So another thing is cross-event participation. Now, there are some Discord communities that are networked with each other, and if there is an event that happens in one location, then people from other communities will come and attend that event. And so higher amount of cross-event participation means that there is a strong correlation of leadership development that also identifies with really good member outcomes. So that's another measurement that could be taken. Now, if we're looking at the tools that we could take all these measurements with, Discord, of course, has its own server insights, although you do need to have a certain number of members in order to use it. Me6 also has analytics for retention tracking as well. And so that's also something else that can be used. And so I think between these two things, it can be properly tracked. Now, there also can be some things that can be made probably with make.com, or maybe looking up and tracking information, but those things are more through third-party analytics that I don't really have a list of what to go and look for, although I have heard of a couple of AI integrations that exist, but I digress. So at some point, a server is gonna, I think that, like I said at the beginning, anything that gets measured is going to help grow the community. So at some point, there has to be some sort of custom dashboard that would benefit the community a lot if they start measuring these things and being able to track those numbers specifically over a long period of time, and also understanding what it is that means. And so whether it's automated reports that show like weekly achievements or weekly highlights or monthly, whatever it is that's going to be used for the actual tracking of analytics, it has to be not only kept up with, but also well understood, not only by the leaders, but by the people that are in the server as well. Because if people are in a community are working together towards this goal, then it would only make sense that everyone know exactly where things are at. And so the more that people are involved in that process, the more that people will then know, like, hey, if we kind of do some more work over here, then, or put some more effort over here, then we can get towards the goals that we're wanting in optimizing the experience for everybody. And that is it for this part. Like I said, these parts are not very long, and a lot of these tend to be a little bit like, okay, that makes sense. But what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna choose one more, and then the other three I will put in the server. I will admit, I actually don't really like talking to myself. I find it kind of awkward to kind of see. I find it very hard to talk. Now, what I'm gonna do is, let's see. So we have post-event engagement that extends the experience, building sustained community momentum. So this is after the event. Let's leave that for later. I think people are wanting to know is what they can do with their events now. So Discord platform capabilities, I will put them to the side. Promotion strategies, I'll also put that to the side. I think that this is a great one. So let's talk about event formats. What kind of formats really work well that drive engagement beyond just basic game night, right? And so this is something that'll help with going beyond the 15% attendance rate problem that a lot of servers have. And so if you've been running a Discord server community and you've been running events and you're struggling with low attendance, you're not actually alone. It's a very common thing. And it's a little sad, but the depressing reality is that most TTRPG servers default to generic game nights that achieve only about 15 to 25% attendance rates, plus also, you know, having the usual like short-term events that don't really add a lot in the long term, like, you know, like a video game night or a let's watch a movie night. But here's something that actually is kind of encouraging from the research. And so research actually shows that successful TTRPG communities reveal that there are about roughly 10 to 15 types of events that can be ran with in the way that it's formatted that'll actually make community engagement really easy, which means that we could probably, you know, everyone can use these different formats and you probably be guaranteed to have a lot more engagement in what you run. So the number one standard is, and the drum roll, because this is something that I've been saying for a long time, West Marches. Of course, I love West Marches. I really do have a passion for them. It really connects a lot of people together. And it's also player-led. And so it's not surprising that they achieve 70 to 80% attendance rates through fundamental shifts in psychological ownership of who is leading the game, which is the players. The players are the ones leading it. They're the ones that are in charge of the journey, more so than the GMs. Now, I will move beyond this because I know that West Marches is something that I will talk a lot more in other videos. So another format is one-shot adventures as an entry point to get people to join the community. A lot of the things that make it really intimidating to join a community is I don't know anyone. I don't know what the social norms are. I am a stranger in a place with lots of people. So the easier that we can make it for people to join the community, the better. Which means that one-shot adventures are a way for them to get to know a few other people and the GM. And oftentimes that's enough. You just kind of need a helping hand to get from, hey, I'm here, to the conversation over here. And being able to play a game is the best way to do that. And so thinking of one-shots as more of a transformative or as almost like a very welcoming entry point into a server actually helps out a lot. And this is something that I have used myself a lot. I used to run a lot of one-shots, especially for the Motherload, and I would play test and I would invite new people in because I wanted to meet new people and I wanted them to have a place to go along, and it worked. It actually does work pretty well. So if you are someone that is very excellent at running one-shots, great, you know, use this as a way to kind of get people into your community and getting them connected. Now, another format that works out really well is multi-table coordinated events, or creating an epic shared experience. A lot of work because it's something that you have to do across multiple tables. And one of the things that I used to run in my West March is I would have raids. And so what a raid is that it would take a lot more than one table to solve the problem. But the problem is that I'm only one GM, so I can't have the raid happen at the same time with multiple people there. And so anytime that I did have more than 10 people at table, which is a lot of players at the same time, I had to be very particular in the way that people were coordinating with each other and also engaging around me as well. And so that would mean that I would have to set up the environment so that way I'm not having to talk with everybody at the same time. I only have to talk with small groups at a time. And there was one time where I had them going on I want to say a goose chase, but they were hunting down things throughout the server They were having to go to other communities, leave the VC and come back, getting the things that they needed in order for us to get to the end of the game and actually accomplish the goals. So that was a way for me to split people up, and it can be very creative and fun if doing that. Word of caution though, if you do approach that, that you want it to be something that is very, how can I put it? Almost like the end goal really has to match doing all that work, because having to go and come back, it can be a lot to ask of someone. But if you are going to run a big big multi-table event, then you definitely want to have whatever is happening to have a lot of autonomy, which means that the players or the people that are played are the ones that chose for these things to occur, and also having meaningful choice and participation levels. Because if you think about it, if you have 20 people, then one person's choice is gonna, matter less than everyone else's. But if you have 4 people, then one person's choice is 25%. So there have to be ways for people to still maintain their value of participation and feel as if they are actually, they can make an impact on what it is that's going to happen as a result of playing in this game. So another format is character creation workshops. So character creation workshops have been shown to achieve about 95% completion rates and 70% conversion rates to active play on the free side. On the paid side, it is very, it can range very, very, very widely depending on how it's run, and really a lot of things. I really don't think that there is a consistent metric for that quite yet. I know that people on the SPG side, we talk about this all the time. I have my opinions, but of course, an anecdote is still only an anecdote. So I actually don't have anything to say as far as official outcomes of paid running character creation workshops versus free ones. But for the free side, there's enough evidence to prove 95% completion rates, 70% conversion to be able to play a game. Because not only does it solve the problem of, hey, I get to learn how to play, I get to also make something together with someone, I also get to have my problem solved, that I also have to have I also get somewhere to play as well with people that I just met. So it only makes sense that this is a really good event format that could work in building TTRPG communities. Another one is community world building. I think that anytime that players are brought in the capability to collaborate on what gets made, it only makes things that much better for them to get invested. And in fact, 30% retention more for games, for players to, there's 30% more retention for players in games where they are part of the world building. I would ask my players like, hey, what do you think about this? Or I would ask them for their input on what kind of content to make next in the West Marches that I read. And it was actually very effective. So this is a good approach to take if wanting to run an event. Another really good framework is GM training workshops. So not only are you helping someone else learn their skills, but about 60% of participants turn into active DMs in that server, which means that they then can teach someone else, or they can then run one-shots to 4 people and then connect other people together. There's so many things that can be done that you can still run your games and also have a additional purpose of providing value. So that way it's not only just transactional. And what I mean by just transactional, I mean, it's imagine that the purpose of the one-shot is just to run the one-shot, but not to connect people from the outside in, right? So if the purpose of the one-shot is then to get people to join the community and be able to connect together, that is not just transactional. It is giving a value beyond just the one-shot itself. And so it's great. So being able to train GMs and then have other people there that are able to help you in building your community, it's a really good approach. Now, next one is that there are, oh wait, did I skip a page? Just a second. No, that's really good. Okay, I was worried that I skipped a page. I was like, wait, I thought there were more. So now, one of the critical success factors whenever building community contribution over consumption is that Events that emphasize community contribution and collaborative creation significantly outperform pure consumption-based activities. So whether it's players organizing their own West March adventures, collaborating on character creation, building shell worlds, or learning to GM, the most engaging events give participants ways to contribute meaningfully, rather than just consume entertainment. And so that's why things such as, for example, I used to be a Twitch streamer. I still stream occasionally, not as much anymore. I guess I'm on YouTube now. But I would say that there was not anything formed beyond the events that I ran on Twitch. Whenever I was on there, I would run things that were very fun. I was like, hey, come watch, let's watch this one art thing and watch me do some ridiculous things. But then once the camera was turned off, nothing would really get formed beyond that, right? It was just in the time of the experience of you being there that people got the entertainment value of watching the thing. And so that's why things that revolve around just pure entertainment, for example, like playing Gartic Phone. I love Gartic Phone. I still think it does provide some relationship building, but it's still a connection with each other, with the medium being the game of short-term entertainment. Among us watching movies, they just really don't work for forming genuine connections with each other. So the more that we can stick away from that and more towards doing things that we can collaborate and build together, and formats that build and also give people the meaning of give people meaning by being able to contribute the choice and autonomy of what they want to build in those events, the better everything tends to be overall. And so events that lead towards contribution consistently will outperform those that are based on consumption. So there you go. And I think that whenever it really comes down to events, being able to make things that are unique. And I mean unique as in, not only do you have a world building event, but maybe you also make it a challenge. Whenever you combine things that are very, that you make them fun, whenever you add different elements of fun, whether it's competition, status, randomness, etc., it only adds to the quality and to the value that is there. And that is all. So I will post all of this on the Discord server. As for these other ones that I didn't talk about as much, what I'm gonna do is, and I think what I'm gonna do for next week as well, is I'm gonna record all of these ahead of time. And instead of on live and giving, I want to say ad hoc, but I mean I did put these together, so it's not really ad hoc. But I want to give you guys the good stuff without having to listen to my like uhs, ums, I'll admit, I'm not great at just talking live like this to myself. I really don't like it. And I never liked it whenever I was a streamer either, which is a big reason why I stopped. Not because nobody was there, I just find it very awkward. I need someone to talk to. I don't like talking to myself. I'm just looking at myself, seeing myself talk, and it throws me off. In any case, that's gonna be it for now. So there you go. So that's three out of the 6. I hope that helps in getting your Discord community up and going. And I'll record the other 3 and post them as well. And also trim this one as well and make shorts and everything, so that way you get the value without all of the in between. Have a great and wonderful day. Have a good one. And I hope that your Discord community flourishes. Let me know if this helped. If it hasn't, let me know as well. All feedback is good feedback. Have a great day.